Trump. America is going to hell. A suitably dramatic and characteristic quote there from Donald Trump, who found himself arrested yesterday and facing 34 charges. More about that in a moment. His appearance once again in the headlines provided us with an opportunity to analyse what's going on vis-à-vis his narcissism and to explain his responses through the prism of his narcissism as an upper lesser type B narcissist. That's one that doesn't operate with a facade, one that is brash, bullying, bombastic and belligerent. It also behooves me to make it very clear at the outset of this video that this is simply an analysis about narcissism. There are some of you who are a little bit hard of understanding who think that the videos about Trump are some kind of attack against him. They're not. They are simply an analysis of his narcissism with regard to current events. And don't make yourself look like a dimwit by banging on about the politics of the situation and accusing me of attacking him when I patently haven't. You're welcome to express your views about the whole situation, of course you are, but recognise that this is an analysis of his narcissism and his reaction to what is going on. It isn't to say that Donald is a good person or a bad person. That's not my place to do so. You can form your own views as to what you think about him. You're allowed to look at the evidence and make your own mind up. What I do is provide you with an analysis of his behaviour. I turn to the Telegraph and an article by Rosina Sabur with the headline, America is going to hell. Donald Trump tells the world after arrest. Donald Trump told the world that America is going to hell in a defiant speech from the ballroom of his Mar-a-Lago resort following his arrest in Manhattan, capping a day of high drama that put the former president centre stage as he plots a return to the White House. Naturally, Trump isn't going to stay silent on these matters. The fact that he has been arrested and faces these charges is a threat to his control. It suggests that he has done wrong. It suggests that he has acted in a criminal fashion, and therefore that is a threat to his control. Whether he has or whether he hasn't, ultimately, is irrelevant with regard to the issue of his narcissism. On the one hand, let us assume that he is innocent of what he is being charged. Naturally, of course, the presumption is of innocence until his guilt is proven. But let us assume that his guilt cannot be proven, that what he's accused of simply didn't happen. In that instance, Donald Trump is using the truth as you understand it to be for the purposes of nullifying the threat to control posed by the charges. Now let's assume he is guilty of what has been done, that there is evidence that would support it and he would be convicted. He still denies it. Why? His narcissism then utilises a revision of history to nullify the threat to control. The point being is this: whether he did it or whether he did not do it, he will still deny it, because the allegations of themselves are a threat to his need for control. And his narcissism jumps to attention when these charges come, and he has to nullify them. And he'll either nullify them using the truth, as you understand it to be, that majority truth, through the majority perspective, namely, he didn't do anything wrong, or, if he has, he will continue to deny it because his narcissism tells him that he hasn't done anything wrong, using a revision of history. But either way, those threats to control must be nullified. Naturally, as an upper lesser type B, he's no shrinking violet. You don't get pity plays from Trump. He's in your face and bombastic. Part of course, his appeal to many voters, and understandably so. What you see is what you get. Rather than hiding behind spin in a political dynasty and a technocratic meritocracy, he points to his successes and points to the fact that he basically does what it says on the tin. And many people prefer that, and they're perfectly entitled to do so, of course. But it is commensurate with the style of narcissist that he is. In your face. What you see is what you get. I call it like I see it. That, of course, gets up the nose of many other people, but also appeals to others, again demonstrating the divisive nature of Trump through his narcissism. He, of course, has to ensure that there is quite a bit of a show put on, because that feeds him in terms of fuel. It allows him to assert control. It's not a case of heading to Manhattan quietly He could have done it, of course, by Zoom. But no, he has to go there, and there is the motorcade, people lining the road showing their support for him. There is all of the media circus when he's in New York, and then, of course, there is the speech that's given when he returns. He's milking it for maximum control and, of course, the drawing of fuel, all underpinned by his subconscious narcissism. The article continues by explaining that in a choreographed rally-style appearance, Mr. Trump said the case against him was an insult to our country. Here, what's happening is Donald Trump sees him and the United States as one. What is good for him is good for the United States. He sees the two as inextricably linked. In some respects, many people would like that. It's a little bit like the Arthurian ideal, that the king and the land are one. This grandiosity, again, is fueled by his narcissism. He insisted he had not committed any crime, denial, nullification of threat to control, just hours after being charged over alleged hush money for affairs paid to a porn star, glamour model and former doorman. Despite being warned earlier about his rhetoric in court in New York, Mr. Trump lashed out at the judge overseeing his criminal case, lack of boundary recognition, nullification of threat to control, sense of entitlement, calling him the real criminal. The 76-year-old had arrived in his Trump Force One, grandiosity, private jet after he pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in a New York court. A moment that plunged the United States into uncharted territory and threatens to overshadow the 2024 presidential race. At his beachfront mansion in southern Florida, against a backdrop of 2 American flags, he told an audience of several hundred supporters, "I never thought anything like this could happen in America. The only crime that I've committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. It's an insult to our country." Now, Donald Trump genuinely believes that. He believes that he fearlessly defends the United States. He doesn't stand there and think to himself, "I don't believe any of this tosh, I'm just saying it because it sounds good." He honestly believes it and lives it because his narcissism causes him to do so. Because by talking in such terms, it enables him to control people because they like to hear what he has to say. Not all, but many. He receives fuel from their responses. In a speech, revisiting many of his favoured claims about his political rivals, he suggested he lost the 2020 vote unfairly because our country is going to hell, bringing up the past, nullification of threat to control. Mr. Trump went on to rail against the judge who oversaw his arraignment, Justice Juan Merchan, calling him a Trump-hating judge, smearing, indirect assertion of control. The attack came despite Mr. Trump being specifically warned about his use of inflammatory rhetoric in court. Mr. Trump had earlier faced a total of 34 felony charges of falsifying business records and pleaded not guilty to all of them during a 45-minute hearing. Denial, nullification of threat to control. Prosecutors said Mr. Trump had orchestrated a catch-and-kill scheme to purchase negative information about himself, and then went to great lengths to hide this conduct. They alleged that payments included $30,000 to a former Trump Tower doorman who claimed to have a story about Mr. Trump fathering a child out of wedlock. If this, of course, is correct, the payment of hush money is a means of using financial firepower to nullify a threat to control. The indictment related to a conspiracy to undermine the integrity of the 2016 election and also involved a $130,000 hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels, prosecutors said. Justice Juan Merchan told the court he was concerned about Mr. Trump's rhetoric in the lead-up to the hearing, in which the former president used social media, assertion of control, drawing of fuel through social media, to attack both the judge and prosecutor, Alvin Bragg. The judge asked all parties to please refrain from making statements that are likely to incite violence or civil unrest. But in a fiery primetime address in Florida, characteristic bombastic style of the upper lesser type B, Mr. Trump unleashed a fresh wave of attacks against Justice Merchan and his family. Now, is Donald Trump frightened of what's going on here? Well, he is an individual that does experience fear, but at this moment in time, he does not fear what's going on because he doesn't see that he has done anything wrong. Again, that might be because he hasn't done anything wrong. Or the evidence shows that he has, but his narcissism is deluding him so that he doesn't believe that he has, and therefore he's entirely confident that nothing is going to happen. This is one of the benefits that the narcissist invariably has. You will often look at a narcissist and think to yourself, goodness me, their level of self-confidence is off the charts. They have an utter conviction that they are right. And that's because the narcissism propels them. And as I've explained, whether he's right because the evidence shows that he is, or whether he believes he's right because his narcissism tells him that he is through the revision of history, it doesn't matter. The outcome is the same. He does not believe that he's done anything wrong. He doesn't fear what's going on. He doesn't have any concerns about it. Indeed, he sees this as an opportunity to give him a platform. His narcissism demands this of him. And of course, those that are possibly seeking to cause a problem for him, if this is politically motivated, have made an almighty fuck-up, because all it's going to do is make him more popular. It's interesting, of course, because on the one hand, the arraignment of a former president appears to demonstrate that nobody is above the law. But then again, is it a dangerous precedent? Because if it is politically motivated, as he suggests, then this is going into dark, uncharted territory for the United States. Understandably so, he would believe that it is politically motivated. His narcissism will tell him that that's the case, but that doesn't mean that he's wrong. Remember, although many times the narcissist will tell lies and experience a revision of history, we also can utilize the truth as we understand it to be and as you understand it to be to our advantage. Take, for example, what I tell all of you. I use the truth of the way that the narcissist behaves, the way that the psychopath behaves, in order to assert control over you through the presentation of my videos and blog articles. I'm telling you the truth of how it is because the use of the truth serves my purposes for the prime aims. Similarly, Mr. Trump may well be utilizing the truth for the purpose of his denial, or it may be a revision of history. We'll have to see. He may well be correct that it is politically motivated, and therefore he's using the truth of that, bolstered by his narcissism, to reject it. We will have to see what the evidence shows. Alternatively, it may not be politically motivated, and he has committed a crime, but he still will deny it because his narcissism demands that it should do. Mr. Trump had more harsh words for Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney spearheading the criminal case against him, as well as prosecutors leading other cases against him. I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating family, whose daughter worked for Kamala Harris, Mr. Trump said to loud boos from the crowd. That, of course, is negative fuel, but he'll welcome it, because the booing's directed against somebody else, not him. The speech in an opulent Golden Cream ballroom focused on radical left prosecutors. With Mr. Bragg, an elected Democrat, Mr. Trump said he was the real criminal and accused him of massive election interference by bringing a prosecution that could stretch through the 2024 campaign. This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately, he said, before railing against Mr. Bragg's wife. Notice also that he's not taking any prisoners here. In typical bombastic style of the upper lesser type B, anybody and everybody is finding themselves on the receiving end of his nullification of threat to control. Mr. Bragg is prosecuting Mr. Trump for falsifying records to hide payments for porn star Stormy Daniels days before the 2016 election, to cover up an alleged sexual encounter a decade earlier. Mr. Trump has repeatedly denied any affair with Daniels and claims the payments were made to protect his family. The affair was alleged to have occurred just after Mr. Trump's third wife, Melania, gave birth to their son, Barron. Mr. Trump struck a more emotive tone as he discussed his great family, flattery, pointing out his two elder sons, Don Jr. and Eric, then referencing his daughter Ivanka and his youngest son, Barron, triangulation through people. I have a great family, and they've done a fantastic job and we appreciate it, he said. Assertion of control through flattery. However, several family members, including Melania, Barron, Ivanka and her husband Jared Kushner, appeared to be absent. Mr. Trump went through the litany of criminal investigations facing him, including probes into his efforts to overturn the 2020 election and his retention of classified documents after leaving office. There were regular boos from the crowd as Mr. Trump name-checked those who he believed were out to get him at any cost. This, of course, is demonstrative of the paranoia of the narcissist, that he sees that the people out to get him. Of course, many people are, so it doesn't mean that he's wrong in what he says, but he will still have that paranoia, because all narcissists have it, as a means of driving the narcissist to pursue the prime aims as effectively as possible. He focused, of course, on a litany of grievances. This is something that narcissists often do, because those grievances amount to threats to control. We've seen it with Harry's wife, where through Arsey Wipes, what she did was basically complain about words which had obviously been used to describe her, and in each episode sought to take them down. Here, Mr. Trump has a litany of grievances about the way that he has been treated. Again, remember, in some instances they may be legitimate, in other instances not so, but either way it's irrelevant. His narcissism deems it a threat to control, and therefore he has to rail against it by calling out these grievances and putting them down, indirectly asserting control over them, because his crowd boo those individuals that he mentions, which gives him a subconscious sense of control over those individuals. The 25-minute speech was incredibly brief by Mr. Trump's usual standards, focusing on a litany of grievances that verged on rambling at times. Mr. Trump wrapped up his remarks by saying, "I have no doubt, nevertheless, that we will make America great again." There was jubilation from supporters who stood clapping, positive fuel from tertiary sources, and outside a crowd of people decked out in Trump 1 flags and clothes emblazoned with the ex-president's name cheered and blared music after closely following his remarks. Again, the provision of positive fuel from tertiary sources and a large amount of fuel collectively for him. His narcissism, of course, doesn't want him to do things quietly. It's his style to be bombastic and belligerent and brash, and this enables him to assert control over his supporters, over those that he slates, and to draw fuel from the responses of those supporters. He doesn't fear what's going on, as I've explained. He's going to face it head on. And those that have taken this action against him, whether politically motivated or not, are actually giving him exactly what he needs and wants: a cause, a platform, and the ability to point out that he's not the problem, but they are. In fact, they are playing into his hands. I'm H.D. Tudor. Thank you for listening.